Welcome into Step 5 in the 10 steps of the number one trusted first-time homebuyer system in the U.S. Step 5 is saving money. How much do you need to save for your down payment and the total closing costs? And how do you balance saving money while you're trying to pay off debt so you can get a home loan approval? Most of the answers that you've been given to these questions are dead wrong. And you know what? That's okay. That's good for you. Truth time.
How to Buy a Home educates, protects, and connects first-time homebuyers to qualified vetted realtors in their area. Whether you're looking for DIY information or step-by-step guidance, How to Buy a Home is the number one resource for first-time homebuyers.
What's up, my How to Buy a Homies? I'm David Sidoni. This is Step 5, saving money for your home purchase. This step is super, incredibly important. So that's why when you're looking at the length of this episode, you'll see I'm taking it very seriously. Because if you've done any research on your own about how much money you need to buy a home, everything you've been told is wrong. Here's the biggest example. This is the myth that will not die. The latest consumer survey found that only 37% of Americans don't know that you do not need 20% down payment to buy a home. In other words, about 6 in 10 Americans are still wrong about one of the biggest barriers that they think is holding them back from buying their first home. Here's the real stats, gang. Since 2018, the typical first-time homebuyer down payment has averaged between 6 and 9%. And in fact, we've only been on the air since 2019, and most of our first-time homebuyers here, the How to Buy a Homies, they're using 3% down payments or a 3.5% FHA loan down payment, or many of them are putting zero down using a VA loan, a USDA loan, or other zero down payment programs available in their area. This 20% myth, this horrible rule, it hasn't been real for decades. I mean, in my 20 years of helping and coaching first-time homebuyers, 90% of them who bought the homes on their own without any gifts from family, they use either that 3%, 3.5% FHA loan or a 5% down payment. 90% of them. And here at How to Buy a Home, more than half of our buyers have discovered that in this current market, with seller credits or down payment assistance programs, they don't even need to save up the full 3% down or 5% down. Listen to this real-life story from Nick. He bought a $312,000 home in Illinois. And it was in 2025, when most people were saying it was impossibly unaffordable to even buy a home.
And then when it came to the table, I'm like, okay, we're probably gonna have to bring a lot to the table. I'm overestimating. And Brian was like, Nick, I don't think you're gonna have to bring a whole lot at all. And then he was like, bring like $4,000. And I was like, really? He was like, $4,000, that's it. And I was, okay. And so we get there at the table, I bring a $4,000 check. And then before we leave, they give me a check back for like 300 and some change. And I was like, oh snap. So I really didn't even need the $4,000.
Yeah, so you've been lied to. That sucks. But you know what? There's so much misinformation about how much money you really need. And there are so many people out there incorrectly assuming that their number is way different than their actual number is. It's not as out of reach as you think it is. So you don't need to lose hope. Because what happens is people lose hope and then they don't even start a plan because the savings number that they have in their head, it seems so unattainable. And that is tragic and we need to fix it. I'm going to put his interview in the show notes so you can see how real life renters bought homes for tens of thousands of dollars less than what the internet tells them they're supposed to have to buy a home. We've got over 125 interviews of renters who learned that their perceived savings number, it was way, way too high. And they became homeowners years earlier than they expected, using a lower chunk of savings than they thought they needed. So I'm going to repeat this again, because from 2023 to 2025, in the most unaffordable housing markets that we have ever seen, the average first-time homebuyer down payment was only 9% during those years. And I even say that number is high because that includes first-time homebuyers who got gifts from their family. One survey showed that 59% of first-time homebuyers used only their personal savings. And that means most of them were using those 3 to 5% down payments. And that's why the national average number is so low at 9%. Sure, it includes the people who are putting 20% down because they got a gift from their family, but it also includes 59% of people who are using 3 to 5% down payments. Here's another real-life example from John. He bought in New Jersey in December of 2025. what was the down payment? A 3% or 5%?
The down payment was 3%, I believe.
3, and then the closing cost, but you got a bunch of that covered.
Right. So I got the grant. He covered the repairs, XYZ. We thought that my out-of-pocket to bring to closing would be around $8,000. It turned out to be about $2,900.
Dude, John, you're in a $318,000 house for $2,900?
Yep.
Hi, everybody. What was your last, first, and last in your last apartment, everybody out there? Say it out loud, listeners, while you're on the train. I bet it was more than $2,900. Gang, this is real. It's just not being talked about. And there's nothing special or like on sale about the How to Buy a Home savings plan. It's very simple, and it's called the Last Lease Ever program. And it's based on the math that has not been explained to first-time home buyers. Now, I've been teaching this for 20 years, and now in 2026 and going into 2027, it just happens to be one of the only ways that renters can become homeowners, especially if they're trying to do this all on their own. And the Last Lease Ever program, it's for any buyer at any price point, anywhere in the country. This is the simple and attainable strategy that the real estate industry doesn't bother to teach the general public, or for that matter, to their new realtors. So what are you going to learn here today in this crazy long episode? I know, split it up, do 2 workouts on it, but you need to know this stuff because it's going to bring you tons of hope. 1, we're going to talk about how much do you actually need to save. And then 2, I'm going to give you tools and tips to help you for your first-time homebuyer savings account. Let's start with the very basic formula that you can use to set your savings goal. I did a homebuyer playbook 2-part series. It's episode on the rent replacement strategy, and episode 441 is the episode on the Last Lease Ever program. I broke down the simple goal numbers for your savings so that you could get clarity and confidence. The money that you need to buy a home, what they like to say when you're buying a house is the money you need to bring to the table. That refers to the closing table when you sign all the documents to buy the home. That number consists of 2 pieces. First, your down payment. Then, your closing costs. When you add those together, it's similar to like a first, last, and security payment when you're getting a lease on a place. And that's how it works. You bring in the money, you sign a whole bunch of stuff, and then they hand you the keys. Now, here's a very simple and a very conservative, overestimated number that you can use for your own personal savings goal. 8% of the purchase price of the homes that you're looking to buy. That's it, 8%. You get that 8% by adding a 5% down payment plus a high estimate of 3% for your closing costs. Now, your closing costs could be much less than 3%. Depends on your area, what time you buy it, a whole bunch of other things. But that 8%, that's the total on this very conservative formula because I want to be as transparent and real with you as possible. So here's how that would work. On a $400,000 home, which believe it or not is still the average home price in America, 8% is going to be $32,000 needed for you to buy a home. But gang, please listen to this. If that's your number, and like, let's say you've currently got 10 grand saved, and maybe it's going to take you 2 years to save up the other 22,000 to get to that 8%, which is $32,000. Hell, even if you only need 6 months to hit the 8% estimate that I give you, this is absolutely 100% not a reason to save on your own and wait to get your guides. This is an estimate just purely to fight all the misinformation out there. And it is not a strict one-size-fits-all guideline for everybody. A whole bunch of buyers that we've seen over the years, and I've seen in my decades of helping people, they find out that they do not need the full 8%. That's why I started you with a few examples, because there are tons of options available to you, as you heard from the listeners. Now, you can discover those options when you're working with a unicorn team. They can show you that the options that you have are drastically lower than that 8%. And that's all you need to get yourself from renter to homeowner. We have several buyers who found out like those guys. Now, here's another one. This is Cynthia in Tampa. She bought her dream home at only 25 years old. What kind of loan did you end up going with on a funky property like that?
3%, and then the seller put in 2%. I'm trying to remember the numbers now because it's been a while.
So you got a seller credit.
Yes.
Do you remember what your total money was you had to bring to the table at the end?
Like 12,500 out of like what did I have? 20, 30,000 saved up? I can't remember.
With the Last Lease Ever program, I tell people to save 8% for a 5% down payment and 3% closing costs. But you ended up reducing the 5% down to 3%. And then the closing costs, instead of having to pay 3%, you got 2%. You bought a $250,000 home for under $13,000.
Yeah, I sure did.
So you can see already that 8% target savings number that I lay out in the Last Lease Ever, it's truly the maximum number that most of you might need to spend. So I'm going to show you how this works with more real stories, because this isn't about rebates or cashback home saving plans. I've seen a whole bunch of those out there. People tell you, hey, save money with us and you'll get $1,000 off of your loan. Now, all of those are sales tactics used by companies with tons of hidden fees and absolutely zero guidance on helping you find all the options like this. A few years back, I decided to share this solution through the stories of real buyers to help demonstrate how Step 5 works. And these are real stories from real people who were introduced to the strategy that first-time homebuyers need even more than ever in 26 and going into 2027 to achieve attainable and affordable options. There's a lot that I could get into on this topic, and I will share more on how your 8% number could actually be more like 5%, 4%, 3%, or even lower like the examples I gave a little bit earlier. And later on, I'm going to for sure get into the math on how and why lower down payment options save you far more than trying to save up for a larger down payment. That's another Jurassic, archaic, ancient, crusty old myth that is absolutely mathematically incorrect when you do the formula in today's high rent economy. But instead of me babbling theory to you, let's see how the Last Lease Ever works in action in the real world with real people. This is from episode 456, just this year. This was an interview with a 24-year-old buyer named Kennedy. Kennedy had $8,000 saved and came to us looking to develop a 3-year plan so she could buy her first home in Kentucky. She was thinking maybe around $300,000. And you did it with a low down payment. What down payment did you end up doing?
My total down payment, I think, ended up being somewhere, I'm not sure, because I had that $12,500 for my down payment assistance, which was really nice. But total, what I ended up spending in like closing costs and everything was only $6,500.
Oh, holy moly. Okay, now, your friends bought a home, similar price, similar style home, and they put $60,000 down. You were just telling me this. What's the difference between your $2,400 payment and their payment because they put that giant down payment?
I think that realistically, whenever we were talking a little bit, and I think it's a difference of around $400 or so, but a $400 difference for a, $55,000 difference for a down payment.
So there it is. That's the numbers that are possible, but you're not going to find it on a website because each of you has your own individual options, not only with all the stuff you've got together, but what's happening in your area. So they can't make a website that says, buy a $300,000 home for $6,500. I'll show you how. Instead, you get this overestimated information. And then you grab that and you plug it into a mortgage calculator and you think, well, that sucks. I guess I can't buy a home until 2030. You're just not getting the right information. It takes local expertise to help you discover all your affordable options. So let's go back to Kennedy and hear more on how she discovered her options and bought a home at 24 years old, not 27 like she thought she was going to. Hey everyone, super excited. I've got Kennedy here. She closed on a home right before Halloween in 2025. Kennedy, you got yourself a $300,000 home. You came to me in April. You had $8,000 saved and you weren't paying rent. So that's something I want to get into. But tell us how with $8,000 in April, let's see. So then that was March, April, May, June, July, August, September. In 5 months, you bought a house. How in the world did you do that?
Yeah, I really have to say I have a big shout out to you because of the knowledge that you have out in all of your episodes and getting me connected when I reached out to you with my lender and my amazing realtor, my unicorn realtor, Cameron. I mean, I absolutely adore both of them, and they have done everything to be able to get me to the point that I'm in now. I didn't think at the beginning of the year when I said I was interested that I would be at this point of already in a home. But sitting down and working with them really helped kind of create a plan. I was able to save double of what I had at that point, and I was still able to go ahead and buy a home. So I'm super thankful for that.
Your whole story is so interesting because of the fact that you didn't know you could do it. You talked to the right people. You said that they helped you. How did they help you save money?
Yeah. So realistically, whenever I met with Cameron, it was essential that I told him straight up, I don't know if I'm ready to do this right now. I really want to go ahead and get connected, learn everything about it because that was important to me. And he just said, let's come up with a plan to be able to kind of tackle. He also let me know that if I'm not ready to buy a home right now, he's not going to pressure me to do it. And I really, really appreciated that because that was one of my fears going into it, that I was going to be pressured into doing different things. And he really took that. So in our first meeting with each other, we sat down, we kind of just talked about everything. He also led me into possible down payment assistance programs that would be available. And that was awesome. When we came up to the plan for, how much money should I be looking at? We shared, I had $8,000 in my savings account at that moment. I was making this much amount. How can I take a look to see how much I could really do? And he made a great recommendation that I should really just filter things automatically into my bank account, which I know that you've had that too in your episodes. For example, when I get a paycheck, I just have stuff immediately go into my savings account rather than having to do it myself. And, that was something that was kind of holding me back in the beginning because I was like, oh, I don't really want to move this over. But it ended up helping a lot because then I knew exactly what I had left over from what my goal was for saving.
I tell people all the time that buying a home is one of the most emotional things you're going to do. So I have studied a lot of psychology because there is a psychology to going on your laptop and moving money versus it just automatically goes there. The psychological moment of you feeling because when you move it, you instantly start thinking about, but I have this bill coming up and I have that bill coming up. So first it starts with knowing your numbers, right? Writing it all out. I don't fault you if you don't. Do you have a monthly budget on a spreadsheet anywhere?
I don't necessarily have a monthly budget on a spreadsheet necessarily, but I do have it in my notes app. I need to definitely make a spreadsheet though in terms of how much that I owe. And what I did is in my paycheck that I get every month, I allotted how much I have in bills to go to a separate account, and then the remaining to go in my savings, and then the rest to go in my checking with whatever I might have. So that really helped to kind of distinguish how much can I actually put in savings, how much are going towards bills, and what do I have in between. So that helped a little bit.
And here are some practical savings tips from Kennedy.
When I moved back home originally, I wasn't saving anything and I was just spending my money on whatever I wanted. I really wish I didn't do that, so I would have had even more. But I was at a place to where I realized this is my goal. I'm going to start saving as much as I possibly can. And I reached a lot sooner than I thought it would.
Did you have a job when you came home out of college and you were just spending money willy-nilly?
Yeah, so I was actually working at the same place that I work at now. And I was able to build a career and everything. And I was getting a good paycheck, but I didn't necessarily have anything to save for. I had a couple, probably $2,000 in my savings account just to have. But other than that, we were going on a bunch of trips. I was buying things that I didn't necessarily need, but I wanted, different things like that. But yeah, that's about it. I did have a job though.
And here's how Kennedy, by learning about the last lease ever and hiring her team early, how her entire savings process changed from a someday savings account to a, 3 months to a homeowner savings account. How long were you saving and when did you start looking at houses, or did you do it all parallel?
Yeah, so it actually moved pretty quickly, which I'm kind of glad that it did in the way, but I'm glad that I equipped myself with the resource to actually learn what I was doing rather than just throwing myself into something that I didn't know. At the beginning of the year in January, I had told my friends and family that, I'm really interested in buying a house and I would love to be able to have a house by the middle of next year in 2026. I never imagined that I would have a house this year by any means, but I told them like, this is a goal of mine. This is what I want to do. So then whenever I was sharing that with my friends and family, my coworkers, different things, I actually had a coworker that recommended your podcast. And I was very, very thankful that I did. She had moved from California to Louisville. And so she was like, I listened to this podcast. David Sonny's amazing. You need to talk. You need to listen to him. You need to reach out to him and different things. So as soon as I reached out to you in April, I was still really hesitant because I was like, I am not like very confident at all. I only have $8,000 saved. Is that even like close to possible? I probably still have 3 years to do so. And when I reached out to you, immediately, like meeting with Cameron, he was very helpful. Like I said, patient with me. He explained everything. And after that, like each step just felt really seamless and smooth. Like I never felt pressured. It was something to where I think we actually began the house search in June or July or so, I believe, of like being able to break down numbers, of working with my lender, Elena, of like, what can I actually afford? What's available to me at this moment? And everything since then, just, it all seemed like very seamless and very smooth to where I never had any anxious nerves about it. And even in times where I didn't think that I could afford it, something else would come up to where it's like, okay, this is perfectly fine. It's going to be good. And the reason why I decided to buy in October when I did is because they had recently upped the down payment assistance program from $10,000 to $12,500, which was really awesome. And Elena made me aware of that. And she did say it ends at the end of November. So if we do think that we were ready to do this, we should probably at least take it a little bit more seriously, essentially. So I think that was really kind of what pushed me to be like, okay, let's do it.
All right. That was Kennedy's incredible journey. And that happened in December 2025 when the internet and all the news stories and the headlines told you that first-time homebuyers were finding it impossible to discover any home affordability. Now, here's another one from Mitchell and Allison. This one comes back from episode 358. These are two very young buyers, and they were so young, it blew my mind. And then they said, oh, and you know what? We want to buy a duplex near Cleveland. I was like, all right, go for it. Do you mind if I ask you how old you guys are?
No, not at all. I am 24. Allison is 22.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we beat that what is it, 38 years old?
Yeah, you crushed it.
I was listening to the podcast for 4 days straight at work, and all the episodes just made me believe that we could buy a house. I didn't think that we were ready because we only had like $22,000 saved up. That's it. But after listening to the podcast, I was like, yeah, maybe we can do this. And then I reached out to you after 4 days of listening to the podcast. I got an email back that same night, like an hour later. And then 3 hours after that, you found Jen for us. So within like 4 hours, we had a realtor. 4 days, we had a realtor. And 2 months later, we have a house. So it's awesome.
You had $20,000 and you guys ended up doing a duplex at 5%. You probably didn't even use all that for your down payment, your closing cost. And would I be correct in that?
I believe our total closing was like $11,000.
It was almost $12,000.
Almost $12,000,
so
yeah.
We were like right on the money. We had some left over. We only wanted to spend like $10,000, which was a little bit over that, but we still had $10,000 left over, which was perfect. A little over $10,000. We had like $12,000 left over.
You guys are investors now. How does that feel? Do you wake up? Do you feel different? Like I'm a big fancy pants?
Yeah, the fanciest
awesome.
pants. Yeah,
it's awesome. Sometimes we'll just be like, we own this duplex just randomly.
Yeah, just
because it's still like crazy. We own a duplex and we're landlords and have tenants.
Yeah, before we even moved in, we were landlords, and I mean that's crazy to think about.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's right. So you went from, were you guys both renting before you purchased the home?
We both lived with our parents.
Yeah.
Funny enough, I paid my parents rent. She didn't pay any rent, so she went from paying no rent to now, owning a duplex. Yeah.
Wait, Allison, did you ever pay rent, or did you always?
No, never paid rent a day in my life. But yeah, now I have a mortgage payment. Went from no rent to mortgage payment.
Half a mortgage payment.
Yeah, not even half.
Half a mortgage payment. Man, I love that story. I mean, think about it. They said, I didn't think we were ready because we only had $22,000 saved up. Yet they only needed half of that to buy their home. No, a duplex. And now, not only has 21-year-old Allison turned 22 when she bought the home, she's never had to rent a day in her entire life, but also, first place she owns, she's a landlord and a homeowner at 22 freaking years old. And this next story comes to us from Stephanie, back from episode 189. Now, this story I have to share with you. I'm going to share it every year because they thought they needed 30% down because that's what a so-called real estate professional told them. And she ended up working with a better real estate professional later, thank God, and she got a much, much better number for the down payment they needed to save for. Check this one out.
So 2 years ago, we did have some debt, right? We had student loan debt, we had some credit cards, we had auto loans, kind of the very, I don't know if we want to call it regular, but a lot of people have this experience where they have those types of debts.
It's regular. It's
yes.
In America and Canada, it's regular. So
Okay.
Don't worry about it. No need to quantify.
Yes. So, we had debt. We also had low credit score and just the uneducated portion of what that really meant for us. They don't teach it in school. We didn't really keep up with it. And then when we went to look at it, we were like, whoops, we really let that go and are not prepared. Another thing that we experienced 2 years ago is the market was very, very different. People were putting in cash offers, way over market price. And we were trying to use my VA loan. I spent 8 years in the Army, and we were very excited to be able to leverage that in our experience. And then we connected with a realtor, just a guy that we reached out to him. We're like, hey, I think we're ready to buy a house, or we want to start to plan. Can I talk to you? He got on the phone with us and said, hey, you don't make enough money. You need to put at least 30% down. And also nobody's taking a VA home loan right now. So don't even think about using that. So we were very, very discouraged with all of those things. And, we thought we just had so much work to do to try and save up 30%. We didn't have 30% in the bank. We didn't have the income for it. My husband as well, he's an entrepreneur. And we had to prove his income in a way that we weren't prepared to do 2 years ago. So that was a big, big awakening for us.
Okay, I have lots of questions about that. But the first thing that probably the listeners want to know is, okay, 2 years ago, you thought it was 30%. What did you end up putting down for this purchase?
We put nothing down.
Say that again?
We put nothing down. We put nothing down.
2 years ago, somebody told you had to have 30%, and now you did it for nothing. So yeah, I hate to hear stories like this, but I do hear them every day. They got straight up lied to by a clueless realtor, telling them they needed 30% down and they could absolutely not use their zero down payment VA option and that no one was taking VA. Lies, just lies. And you saw the result. I can't make this stuff up. The lesson here is, instead of asking Google or AI how much you need to save, talk to an expert, but make sure it's a real expert, because 87% of realtors quit their job in 5 years. So that means you only have a 13% chance of finding an expert who is actually going to have the correct information so they can show you all your options and not make you feel hopeless like that first guy did for them. Most of the so-called professionals, the realtors out there, they don't have a clue how to form your personal strategy so you can find the solutions in today's market. I talk to thousands of buyers every single year, and I can share with you that for most of you out there, you're going to be able to buy a home using that maximum conservative 8% figure. It's truly the maximum you're going to need. Most of you are going to be able to do it for a lot less. Now, if you want to know your exact number, jump back to step 2, get yourself your guides and ask them. Now, I know some of you listening to this are just waiting for me to give you your exact savings number. I see you out there, all you detailed analytical people. Okay, well, I got bad news and good news for you. The bad news is anyone who gives you an exact number, they're selling you something. You all have individual and unique buying numbers. That's how buying a home works. So I can't tell you your number. And ethically, I wouldn't ever do that to anyone. And anyone who gives you a definitive answer without having a 30 to 45 minute conversation with you, a caring and empathetic discussion about everything in your life, your family's goals, your hopes, your dreams, talking to you about your debts, your assets, your salary, your debt to income ratio, your potential promotions, or how your overtime works. They're not talking to you about your future family plans, about plans for pets, kids, or none of the above, or 100 other different things. That person is not helping you design the right savings plan for you, and definitely not the best one. Not to mention, I don't have a clue about what seller credits or down payment assistance programs might be happening right now in your immediate area. I have a general idea, but I don't know the specifics. And think about that. If you got a seller credit or down payment assistance that came to you, that could change your 8% number by a full 3 or 4%. And that is tens of thousands of dollars that you don't have to put onto your savings goal. The good news is I've now given all you bent out of shape Captain Von Anal exact number types someone to rage against because you can't get the exact number. It's me. Go ahead, rage at me, because I'm about to answer the question with 2 words that I know people like you don't want to hear. How much do you need to save to buy a home? It depends. I do not know your exact number. I certainly don't know your best number, because it's going to depend on you, your goals, your saving style, your financial relationship with money, and most importantly, your options that come when someone knows everything about you. They know your full picture. I mean, even with my last lease ever savings estimated number of 8% of the purchase price, 5% for the down payment, and 3% for the closing costs. All right, on a $500,000 home, 8%, that's $40,000. But what if you discover after talking to a professional that because of your debt and your income, you can use a 3% down payment? Well, now 8% just got reduced to only 6%. And that's $30K, not $40K. That's a $10,000 difference. And what if in your specific area, in your region of the country, right now, sellers are offering credits? Well, then you could ask for $10,000 in closing costs with each offer that you write. Now, $10,000 off, we just went from $40 to $30 to only $20,000. That's 50% less than when I started talking about this example about a minute and a half ago. And those are only 2 of the many, many options a first-time homebuyer, specialized team, and those are only 2 of the many, many options that a first-time homebuyer specialized team can help you calculate. Now, I know you're here to get your number, but that's the way it works. I could go on and on with other mathematical possibilities, but there's literally hundreds of them. So instead, let me just reiterate this not spoken enough fact about saving for a home. It depends, and you cannot Google it. AI cannot tell you, and nobody's made an app for it. I know all too well that you're getting wrong information, that you're getting incorrect numbers with misinformed research that is sitting out there on websites. And I know many of you are getting misinformation from realtors and lenders who have no business being an advisor. They're door openers and order takers. So when I say it depends, please don't angrily take your ear pods out and chuck them against the wall, because I'm saying this with love. It depends. It shouldn't enrage you. It should encourage you, because you're finally hearing the truth. So from here on out, it depends means hope. Now, there are lots of people out there who don't even start saving because they think that they don't make enough income, enough salary to be a home buyer. Well, let me kill that myth too with this definitive answer. The amount of salary that you need to make to get approved for a home loan for a $500,000 home in 2026 or 27, it depends. All right, who still kind of hates me a little bit? The exact answer for how much salary changes daily. I mean that, daily. Thanks to interest rates, which change daily, and sometimes multiple times a day. So that means your formula changes multiple times a day. And the home prices, the other piece you're going to put into your equation to figure out how much money you need to make, they're going to fluctuate by tens of thousands of dollars, depending on dozens and dozens of factors as you're watching the market each week. And finally, your personal calculation is really going to also depend on your own debt. That's huge. The debt portion really changes how much salary you need. Because if someone's got $1,500 worth of monthly debt that they need to pay at the minimum, we've talked about how your DTI, your debt to income ratio, how it is created. Well, if someone's got $1,500 and the other person has nothing, well, then the person who has no debt, maybe they only need to make $70,000, where the other person needs to make $125,000. It's not an exact science. Can't get a simple generic answer. Not at all. So again, I say it with hope. It always depends. Depends on you, the market you're in. Depends on credit score, your debt, and then that will help you determine how much of a down payment, how much you need to save, and then how much salary you need to get approved for the loan price that you want to get. Okay, let's get back to more listener stories with a whole bunch of lessons on how much you need to save, why a low down payment worked for them. This is 25-year-old Cynthia. She's got some really good savings tactics that she used. When you're living at home, you're not just saving to buy the house, but you have to be prepared for that new payment. Yeah, it's $1,000 less than you'd be paying $3,000 out in the wild. You're only paying $2,000, but you weren't paying that every month. Right now, you're paying $2,000. Are you still finding a way to keep some sort of small savings? And because what it sounds like is you've adjusted from saving everything to having your home be your savings account now.
For the most part, but I still have, and to be fair, I did follow your advice. I'm pretty sure I heard it from you. I was kind of doing it already, but then I cemented it once I heard it in your podcast. I was paying $2,000 every month because I paid biweekly, and $1,000 out of my paycheck went straight into the house savings. So really nothing changed in my budget besides instead of that $2,000 going to the house savings, it's just actually into the house. But since I've been
practice payment,
right?
Practice payment. It's
yes.
Like step 7 or 8, I think, in the 10 steps. Yeah.
Yep. So I was doing that for pretty much the entire year beforehand. So luckily it wasn't a huge difference between that. And then just being out here, being happy. I don't, go out to eat as much, like that kind of thing. I have my own kitchen. I'm cooking. My friends come out. We play with the animals. We ride around on the ATV. So it's we're not going out and spending money. So anything I've really just, been able to save and just be comfortable. And then that $2,000 just kind of rolled over into the house instead of the savings fund.
And next, she's going to tell us about a big tip that lots of first-time home buyers are using to beef up their savings, especially now in inflationary times of 26 and 27.
I don't come from a big family with money. There was no borrowing money from anybody anywhere. However, I did as one of your podcasts say, the second best thing your parents can give you is I lived at home. So I lived at home. I saved. And then I actually worked at the barn that I boarded at. So I took care of their horses, and in turn, I had free board. So all I had to do is pay for my horses, vet bills, feed, everything else.
Sure.
I was very blessed in being able to save so much because I think I paid my mom $100, maybe $200 a month in rent. And then I paid my own car insurance, the regular bills, but not having a rent and then not having board, was a blessing. And so all of that, I didn't touch it, went straight into the house savings fund. And that's how I was kind of able to do all this by myself.
It's a huge saving trick to live at home if you have the option.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of different people that I've interviewed who my parents don't have the money, but okay, so in your area, if you were renting, and if you didn't work at the barn and were paying for that, what would your house rent and your horse rent, what would that have been approximately?
So my friends right now that rent pay between $2,000 to $2,200 a month.
Okay.
And then board goes anywhere from, if you take complete care from your horse morning and night, it can be the cheapest, $600 a month, but most is $1,000 to $1,200 a month.
Okay, so let's call it $3,000 a month if you didn't live at home and to board your horse.
Yep.
And what is your full monthly payment for you and your horse's house?
$1,927.
Jeez. And you own it.
And I own it. And it's mine. 2.5 acres in Florida. I still to this day, the whole first month, July, at work, they probably thought I was obnoxious. I kept going, guys, guess what? And they're like, what? I own a house. I was obnoxious and I did not care. Like, I not only do I own a house, but I own a forest. Like,
wow.
yeah.
And you get to walk out your back door and go hang out with your horse.
Oh yeah. Midnight the other day, I woke up and I just went out to the barn and I stared at my horse. I'm like, I should be sleeping, but I'm just so happy.
Oh my God. Saving up to buy your first home has much bigger and expansive math than just setting a target savings number based on a mortgage calculator payment. Listen to this story told by Joelle and how she learned how to take control of her home buying process. Listen to how she and her mother came to reframe the math of how she's going to save money, what she's going to do to save money afterwards, and overcoming the fear of being house poor.
Yeah, the stability and knowing that the rent would be the same. So my landlord had been talking about selling the place, which would change all of this math, right? And that wouldn't be in my control because so many of them wanted to offload it. So like, you know, you end up being in a spot where you're like watching your landlord's life. Like, are they getting a divorce? Will it sell? What's happening? Like, okay, I need to get out of that and have more control over what's going on. And then also a big part too is coming to terms, this is the emotional part again, coming to terms with the fact that I was using that gap between like what was coming in and what was going out for rent to save. Like most of that went to savings. And I was having a conversation with my parents and my mom was like, well, you don't have to worry about not having that much, the same level of buffer anymore, because this is the thing you were saving for. Like you were putting away for this. So if you have this, you may not need to save to the same level as quickly. Like you can take your time with certain things or make adjustments. And that was like, oh yeah, like this is the thing. You don't save to save, you save for a reason. And this was my reason. And I just was hesitant to get out of that mindset.
What's great is once you finally moved on from bad advice she was getting, incorrect information out there, did deeper research here on the podcast, she got the real math, figuring out how saving was going to work for her, creating a rent replacement strategy. So instead of trying to save 30% for a down payment, that ended up being a 0 down payment. So she could take control of her life much sooner. And you know what? You gotta love mom. She saw her child freaking out. And what did she do? She brought the math. When Joelle was freaking out and said, I don't want a higher mortgage payment with a low down payment, mom calmly explained, hey, this is what you're saving for. Mom understood a big principle here at How to Buy a Home. Your home is a forced savings account. I understand there's a lot of emotions in buying a home, but that's why I always bring you the math so you can get practical comprehension. I understand that maybe even just saving, you might have some emotions that pop up. Listen to how Matt and Jess, who bought their first home in Pittsburgh, they discovered that the non-emotional math breakthroughs really helped calm their very real, let's call them freaked out emotions.
It's just the numbers, it's the math. That took all the emotion out of it for me. Anytime I was sort of spiraling into anxiety about we're never going to be able to do it, I would go back to, let's just look at the numbers. And our lender was really so helpful. Anytime there was a house I was even remotely interested in, I would send the property over to them. They would send me kind of a cost estimate. And so that was really helpful to start getting our head around, what it would cost, looking at the monthlies, breaking it down. That really helped me to feel logical about it in a time where it was really easy to get overwhelmed and stressed about it. So it was really kind of, I think, surprising at first to look at these huge numbers that we'd never really had experience, with these types of figures in purchasing anything ever before. So I think we kind of had to it just took some time to start to really just focus on the numbers, focus on the math, look at the bank account, look at, our savings, really start to have these conversations. But once we got back to the numbers and took some of the fear and anxiety out of it, that's what helped us to move forward and not get stuck in some of that anxiety paralysis.
And Michael was great to work with because he helped to explain things to us in a way that it didn't make us feel stupid, even though we were very new to this whole thing of owning our own home. But he did it in a way that was just very kind and considerate of where we were in life and how and recognized that we had a lot to learn, as we were jumping into this whole process.
I say a lot on this podcast, hey, you don't have to do this on your own. And I'm not talking about the finish line. I'm not talking about the end when you start looking at houses and making offers. I mean, you don't have to do the planning on your own years ahead of time. And this goes for everyone, from the buyers in the country to the buyers in the big city expensive areas. You don't know what you don't know, but you will discover it working a plan with an expert well before you've been told that you're supposed to employ them. If you live in an area where starter homes or condos or townhomes are $500, $800, or $1 million or more, the savings myth that has seeped into the brains of renters in these areas that's killing them is that homes are so expensive in their area that you've got to save 20% for a down payment, because that's the only way, putting a big chunk of money down, that you can make the monthly payment affordable. Here's why, even in the expensive areas, that 20% down payment rule messes with people's heads. Yeah, on paper, 20% down looks prettier. If you're buying a $500,000 home at a 6.5% interest rate, the PITI payment, your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, if you put 20% down, that's around $3,028. With 10% down, it's more expensive. It's $3,344. And when you tack PMI on top of that, you're roughly paying $400 a month more. Now, that sounds like a reason to wait for people, but waiting has a payment too. Waiting is not free. If you've already saved the 10% down on that $500,000 house, it's going to be $50,000. And you convince yourself that the only way to get an affordable mortgage payment is to put 20% down. You need to get to $100,000. You've got to find and save another $50,000 while you're still paying a high rent every single month. Now, even if you're lucky and you have a cheap rent, call it $2,500, because most people in those areas are paying more than that. But even $2,500, that's $30,000 a year. So if it takes you 2 years to save up that extra $50,000, you spent $60,000 in rent just to avoid a few $100s more a month in your payment. And there's a whole bunch of other math that I've explained back in episode 460 on how it's not just losing $60,000 a month, it's also losing 2 years of home appreciation. So, hey, I don't know. This doesn't automatically mean that 10% down is the right move for everybody. But it absolutely means that the 20% down rule is not automatically, unequivocally the smart thing to do. In this high rent economy, the question is no longer, how do I avoid PMI at all costs? That is seriously stepping over a $100 bill to save a nickel. The better question is, what's the total cost of this waiting period? And what am I giving up while I'm trying to save up and follow an advice from an economy that doesn't exist anymore? There's only one true way to know if in today's economy, you're making the right decision on your timing to buy a home. And that's to get a plan. Remember, when you start your plan early, you're in total control. You can hire a pro, follow their plan, and if in 6 months or a year and a half, you decide not to execute on that plan, cool. You don't pay him anything. You're done. You can stop. That's your choice. But if you don't start a plan, you're never going to know your options. And wouldn't you rather find out that you're not getting the type of support that you're looking for from your real estate support team 6 months, a year and a half ahead of time so you can fire them? Because then you go out and hire the right team. Instead of people planning and saving on their own, and then they find their dream home on Zillow, and then they rush to get a realtor and a lender, and then they put an offer on a home, and now you discover while you're under contract that these people do not have your best interest in mind, and they're not helping you get the best deal on a home. It's truly a no-lose situation planning early. And in the 2026-27 housing market, the only way to not get left behind looking back with regret, with home prices slowly rising, rents not so slowly rising, and inflation nipping at all of our heels, it's to find creative solutions as soon as you can so you can figure out what's best for you and your financial stability. Now, here are some buyers who found some out-of-the-box creative thinking to find a win even in a tough economy. This was from 26 or 25, I'm not sure. This is Kyle and Carla and Hayden, their 11-month-old baby. And you should know, they bought this home when Carla was 10 months pregnant. Yeah, that's a thing. More fun math that I learned when I had my first child. But that's not the math you should be looking for. Listen to the home buying math. And you purchased, I mean, it's not a small place. I mean, it was almost 500,475, right?
Yes, 475 is what we closed with.
Yeah. Okay. So how much budgeting did you do before you talked to the team, and how much changed after you were talking to the Unicorn Squad?
Budgeting wise, we both kind of made a plan to set aside, roughly like 25,000 and put like a little safety net in that. And we kind of like prepared for not only obviously medical bills coming in with having Hayden, but also making sure we had a little, we'll say like leeway for moving down as well as putting down a down payment. So we kind of had like a target, and we got that and felt comfortable with everything else we had as like a nice flex.
Did you find different and new creative options, or had you saved enough that you came in and you kind of the realtor and the lender kind of pushed you down the path that you were already expecting to go, as far as your down payment and your monthly payment and all that stuff?
I'd say they helped us make sure that we stayed on a path that we were comfortable with moving forward.
Yeah, to add to that, some like unique things that maybe some of your listeners would find value is we were really open and honest with our realtor and our lender about our money situation and priorities. And with the newborn and everything that is just, out, who knows what's going to happen, the unknown, we had to prioritize cash flow. And so I know like maybe like Dave Ramsey and some of the other podcasters, they may cringe at this. But one thing that we did was we actually, our offer included built-in concessions to cover our closing costs. So it was less money that we had to pay upfront for the house. So the house was really listed at $467. We offered $475 and included in our offer $8,000 in closing costs, just to save us, again, the cash flow aspect.
So what did you guys end up putting as a down payment? What percentage did you guys come in at?
Yep. So 3.5. And again, our realtors know like we could do more than that, up to 5 or 6 of the home range that we were looking at. But again, just to prioritize cash flow, they helped us look at, okay, what's your monthly difference between putting 3.5 down to get FHA loan or putting down 5 or 6? How does that impact the now and moving forward? And it ultimately just meant, us putting down 3.5, the extra 1.5% didn't make that much of a difference in the monthly to motivate us to forfeit extra cash in the present.
The extra 1.5 that you would have put down would have saved you maybe $100 a month, but would have cost you thousands in cash immediately for a new young family. Okay, I talked to some of the people in the high cost of living areas and gave them some advice. Let me give some advice for maybe some of you are sitting there thinking, dude, that's cool, but I don't have the option of figuring out, should I put 10% down or 5% or 3%? I only have like maybe 1% saved, dude. Okay, I'm with you. And first of all, that could be enough. Now, I'm going to suggest to shoot for 8, but you never know because, well, it depends. But let me give you a tool that might be really helpful, something else that you've got at your disposal. And this tool, used by many first-time homebuyers that I've worked with over 20 years, this one's also got a very negative reputation, but you got to hear me out. Ready? You can use your 401k or other retirement funds for a one-time, no penalty, non-taxable event if you use those funds for the down payment purchase of a primary residence. Who has been told that this would be sacrificing your future and is a stupid, dumb thing to do? Well, I've done the math, and for many of you, that's just wrong. I know why you think that. I get it. But I've been doing this math, and I've seen how it works, and I've talked to people and see how it works for them in their lives. So once again, I'm going to go to my buddy Math, who would humbly like you to explore this option. And then you do what you want to do. Make your own truly informed decision. I'll give you an example from way back when, episode 113. This is Stephanie. She's a Gen Xer, intelligent, great interesting woman, and she was freaking on the ball, and she bought a home by herself. And she came to this decision for her own future with the math.
Yeah, one revelation was I was listening to one of your episodes, and I knew, because I'm a single person, that I would probably need to borrow from my 401k to make a down payment, which a lot of people tell you not to do. And I knew that I would have to do that. And it gave me some hesitation, like it kind of gave me a little anxiety. And one of the things you said is you have to think of it as diversifying your investments. And that really made a lot of sense to me, because I could, keep socking money away into my 401k and look at the number and be all proud, but I would still be renting and that rent would still go up. So it made a lot of sense to me, especially how I could also recalibrate my contributions so that I'm not, putting my entire paycheck into my mortgage. So all of that was like, wow, I didn't even think of it that way. So it made me feel a lot better about the direction I was going in.
We all have different savings at our disposal. You can either change how much you contribute to your retirement plans, or you can use some of your retirement plans like Stephanie did. Those are just a couple of the myriad of options that you can't get by just going to a website and punching some numbers into a form or a calculator or an app. She learned that using her 401k for a down payment, that should not be seen as reckless or irresponsible. It's not taking away from your future or withdrawing from what you've already saved. Rather, it's a simple diversification of your retirement portfolio. Now, if this is something you're interested in, there's a whole bunch more details in episode 423. And in fact, I got another story about this as well. This is our friends Matt and Jessica from Pittsburgh. This is how they found out that they had a different 401k, because it wasn't even a K, it was a different letter. Listen to what happened to them. So that means you must have had your down payment figured out. What did you guys end up doing for a down payment?
This is something else that I really learned from your podcast. The down payment wasn't going to be possible for us unless we borrowed against my retirement plan, which at first that seemed very scary. And that, I don't know if that's a good financial decision. Maybe we shouldn't do that. That was definitely a myth that was kind of busted for me from listening to some of your episodes. I remember a particular episode, you might have been interviewing somebody else, but essentially they kind of framed it as, or you framed it as diversifying your investments when you borrow from your retirement. And that really just clarified for me that that was the right choice for us. And it made it possible. We really didn't have enough saved otherwise to make the down payment without borrowing from my retirement.
And then there's another one from Anna. Anna is one of my favorite episodes from episode 273. She's a single mom. I don't know how old she was. She told me she wasn't in her 20s anymore. She ended up buying a home in the greater Atlanta area, and she's got a really, really funny story. Check this one out.
My story starts like many success stories, and that is with a breakup. We did have plans to move in together in October, which is why my lease ends when it does, is that was our plan. And he decided he wanted to unsubscribe. And this is the sweetest lemonade I have ever made out of lemons. Some girls get a haircut. I bought a home.
Do you have any other tips for the people out there that we didn't cover? Because your story is so incredible.
Well, thank you. Another big thing that I learned from you, or it kind of reframed things for me, was retirement investing. I'm not old, but I'm not in my 20s anymore. And so I'm I'm investing. I'm putting into my retirement as much as I can. And I'm like, I gotta save. So I did not dip into my retirement for my closing costs, but what I did do was decrease my contribution. I was like, as soon as I get to where I can open my computer up, I'm going to go in the system and like half my retirement contributions.
This is from Anna the Frugal.
Once I get settled in the new place and everything, I'll crank them back up. But just to have that cash coming in to help me with the closing and now the things that I need to do to the place to get it ready to move in, that was a big help. And I don't feel like I'm cheating myself. and I'm still paying myself. It's just kind of going in a different bucket.
What was your down payment? Did you do a big one or?
No, I did a tiny down payment of 3%. Isn't
Wow.
that amazing? And like, that was one of my biggest misconceptions, I guess, was the 20% down payment. And what is so silly about that is that I actually have bought a home before, but I was married and it was several years ago. So on paper, I'm actually considered a first-time home buyer, but I'm like a second first-time home buyer. So, you would think that I would know and remember that you don't have to pay 20% down. But it's just one of those things that I think it's kind of drilled into our heads and people say it and we forget that you don't have to do that.
Great episode. There's a ton of great tips in that one. We'll put it in the show notes. And the reason I like it so much is because Anna's fun. She's a character, but you're getting a whole bunch of teaching tools from a real person, not a salesperson. Somebody who actually did it and how they did it. Now, if you want more specific tools and tips and tactics for how you actually save money, I dropped a 7-part series, How to Financially Prepare to Buy a Home. It starts at episode 415. Get very specific and actionable tips to help you save money. The biggest thing that you can do right away, I'll give you a little teaser right now, that's picking a budget that fits your lifestyle. And once you do that, automate. Make the savings habit happen without you having to think about it. And in several past episodes, I've discussed the 70-10-10-10 rule. The concept comes from a really simple book on finances called The Richest Man in Babylon. It's a super simple concept. You live on 70% of your income for all your life expenses, your wants and your needs and your fun stuff. And then you put 10% into savings, 10% into investing, and 10% to charity. That's one way so you can adjust your spending and start saving. Now, there's tons of different formulas like that. NerdWallet has one. It originally was designed for the millennials because, about a decade ago, all we heard about was how the millennials didn't want to be tied down. They wanted to be able to travel and live life while they were young. So they came up with this. It's a 50-30-20. 50% for your needs, 30% for your wants. So you can still live your life, baby. And then 20% for savings and repaying your debts. And if you're really gung-ho, get yourself a budget app. And know, just like figuring out your savings for your down payment, what's the best app for you? It depends. It depends on the budgeting app that you're actually going to use. So it's your call. Episode 416 has the breakdown of the top budgeting apps for first-time home buyers. I'm here to help with as many resources as I can because I know that post-pandemic saving money, it's been tough. And unless you got a rich uncle, it's going to, drop you 50 or 100 grand and you want to buy a home, you got to start saving today. I'm not saying deprive yourself. I just want you to see the big picture and get on the solution side of this. There's a whole bunch in that 7-part series. So get after it, automate your savings immediately and get started. Don't just listen to this podcast. Take actions from this podcast. It could be super small. Your automated down payment savings account, it could be $25 a week or $25 a month or $250 or $500 or $1,000 a week or a month. But the key is start it today. Automate it right now. There is zero downsides to starting a home down payment savings account because no one's saying that money has to go to buying a home. You can do whatever you want to in the future. And I'm going to give you one quick bonus tip, something that could involve your parents or even your friends. 24-year-old Kennedy, she mentioned it at the top of the show. And in episode 239, I talked to Isaiah, and he told us that they were about $5,000 short of their savings goal. They'd done all the numbers and they figured out, okay, we can buy a home. We just need $5,000 more. And it was going to take them months and months to save it. Well, at the time, they were spending $2,000 a month in rent. And since they had that solid team in place and they knew they only needed $5,000, they asked their family if they could just squeeze in with them for 3 months. Family didn't have $5,000 to give them, but they had room on the couch. So 90 days later, bam, $6,000 in rent money saved and into their down payment savings account, and they bought a home. I'm not saying everybody has to sacrifice. It's not one or the other. It's both and. the system and the program where you discover that you can buy a home for less than you thought that you needed to save. And of course, then you're going to get the benefits of the homeowner, because the longer that you own, the more your wealth grows. But right now, if you don't have to save up as much, then you've got more money to do the things you want. Forget house poor. Forget unaffordable thinking. If you're planning right, then you can get around those things. Because I know there's a lot of people who think that, once you buy a home, that's it. You're tied down. You're done. All your savings are gone, and you're going to have to be a slave to the mortgage, and you're never going to get to do anything fun anymore. Well, if you use the real math, it doesn't have to work that way. Back in episode 161, I interviewed Sally. She and her husband figured out how little they needed to buy a home, and they went, all right, cool. So they started saving enough money to have that low down payment and buy furniture and go to Spain as soon as they closed on their home. It's just math. Once Sally had the math, she developed her custom personal plan, her savings number, and she added her own non-negotiable extras to their number so they could buy the furniture and go to Spain. They seriously closed on the home and went, thanks, locked it up, off to Spain. That's steps 1 through 5. You are halfway there. These are the foundations. And look, I want to make sure you understand. I guarantee the next 5 steps are going to be much shorter episodes, and they're going to go much quicker than the first 5, but we had to lay this foundation. And that's for your benefit, because the real estate industry, they have straight up done you dirty. Aspiring first-time homebuyers go online and they start researching, trying to figure out what to do, and they don't find great answers. So they end up going down the rabbit hole and looking at tons of information on, how to do a home inspection and not get screwed and avoid red flags, or negotiating a contract. And all the while they're researching that, they're trying to save up on their own with no expert plan in place. Or worse, people spend hours and hours researching how to get the best interest rate or how to get the best loan. And when they see all those numbers, that's when they give up hope. That's why I went deep into detail on the big 3: credit score, debt, and savings. So you can see that when it comes to saving up to buy a home, you have much more hope than what you're being told. So get ready for steps 6 through 10. And when you're done, you're going to have earned, it's a home buying doctorate. And if you're really ready to jump on this right now and it makes sense to you and you want to get that head start with your own unicorn team, just go to howtobuyahome.com right now, fill out the information, and get yourself a team so you can work with the pros while you're saving money and while you're still getting educated here. Plus, you're going to have the local experience and knowledge to put your own personal custom plan together. Unicorns know that when you reach out to them, you may not be ready to buy right now. And you know what? Cool. A real unicorn's not going to force you to. In fact, they oftentimes ask you to step back and work on your plan first, so you can set yourself up for the best options with maximum purchasing power. And before I go, I got to ask you, if you're liking what you're hearing here in these 10 steps, please do me a favor. Number 1, make sure you subscribe. Number 2, if you can take 30 seconds, 60 seconds, and write a review on Apple or Spotify. Please, please, please. Not just 5 stars, write one out, because it really helps other people find us. And the more people that find us, the more I can keep doing this and giving it away for free. In fact, if you've got other renter friends, share the link of this show with them. Let me leave you with some uplifting stories from Kennedy and Cynthia. 24-year-old recent college graduate who only had $8,000 saved, thought it was going to take 3 years and took 3 months. What would be your biggest tip? Like your friend said, listen to the podcast. So I'm taking that off the table. We're going to assume everybody does that first.
Sure.
What's your biggest tip as someone who just went through the process?
Yeah, I really think that being patient with yourself and also understanding that you're capable of a lot more than you might think in the moment. For example, I was so hesitant to reach out to you to get connected with my unicorn team that I'm so thankful that I went ahead and overcame that fear and that hesitancy so that I can get started on the process. Being patient with yourself, having a goal in mind, but also don't force yourself to have to go through something that you're not ready for necessarily don't settle is what I'm saying. There's going to be something there for you, but at the same time, know that you're capable of doing it. And then also get connected with the unicorn team because it will change your life and you can do things so much more confidently and smoothly with it.
It's just amazing. I'm like living my dream. I'm out here, I'm alone, and I'm the happiest person I could. It's just amazing. And I'm listening to your podcast just motivated me since 2022 when I started listening. And just being like, one day. And then it was like, okay, I got the house. And then it was like working so hard to make it possible for my horse to move home and then getting there. And now it's like I'm sitting here and like I went out and I was just like hanging out in the middle of the night because I was like, I'm here. I'm living my dream at 26 years old and I made it and I'm so happy.
So I don't say this lightly. You've been lied to. But you know what? That's a good thing. Because when you find out the truth, the American dream can still be achieved. You just need the updated playbook. You can find yourself living in a financially stable, rent-free, extraordinary life. You can do this.
Looking for more DIY education or your own personal step-by-step guidance through the home buying journey? Since 2019, How to Buy a Home has been the #1 resource for first-time home buyers. So visit howtobuy.com to get started.